All right. Well, welcome to the Sports Junkies. This show started out on radio at San Francisco State University in the early 2000s. And, of course, we graduated and moved on. But Ben over here, who works here at the station, decided, hey, let's bring it to TV. Yeah. So we are back, and we are back, and this time on TV, so it should be a lot of fun. I'm Thomas Bookwalter. We got Ben Baker over here.
Hey.
And, of course, our friend Alex, who goes to St. Francis High, right, Alex?
Correct.
And Alex has been on the show with us since he was 9 or 8. So he's kind of grown up as a sports junkie, so this should be a lot of fun having him back on. And, of course, we got our fourth guy, Dave, on the phone. He couldn't be in the studio today, so he's kind of the voice of God on the air. Dave, how you doing? Dave?
David speaking here.
There we go.
I wish I could be there with you guys, but circumstances couldn't make me be there today. But I'm sure you guys will have a great show coming ahead.
Well, Dave, when we finally do another taping and you get in here, it'll be good to have you on, man. But good to have you on the phone too.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for calling me.
Oh, definitely. All right, guys. Well, should we? We have a lot we could talk about here. I mean, we got the Giants pretty much almost dead, but they're still technically alive, right? I mean, and of course, they're coming off their World Series here last year, and a lot going on and what's going to happen in the offseason. We got football. The 49ers, of course, have started their season, as with the rest of the NFL. Basketball, we may not have a season this year. Let's face it. I mean, we just found out that looks like the preseason has been canceled, at least the first couple of weeks of it. Have been officially canceled by the NBA, so that's kind of a bummer. And of course, the Sharks are coming up too. Which, let's face it, Ben, the Sharks are the closest team to here in Santa Cruz, closest
right.
Bay Area team, and also the most probably out of all the Bay Area teams. Even with the Giants winning the World Series last year, the Sharks overall probably the most successful franchise.
Every year they seem to be, in the playoffs or close to it, and sometimes contending for the Stanley Cup.
That's the big question: is when they're going to win the Stanley Cup. And it's got to happen at some point, right, Alex?
Well, the thing is that the NHL playoffs are just the most difficult playoffs to go through, just because of the fact that you have to win 16 times to get it all, and there's a chance that you play 28 games. All high paced, all very physical, very violent. Not as many penalties as you normally would see in a regular season game. That's what makes it
no
so
shootouts,
tough.
It's all overtime.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fights every game.
Every game.
Oh yeah. And you have some people making little weird comments about other people on the play, which raises the intensity. And of course, I'm talking about Jeremy Roenick's comments about Patrick Marleau during the playoffs last year, which we can get into later. But
right.
All right, hey Dave, we got you on the phone. We thought we'd talk a little 49ers. What do you think?
It sounds good to me. Let's get to it.
All right. Well, the 49ers coming. The thing about the Niners is, I wanted to start. Obviously, it's always fun when football season starts up again. Niners have played a couple of games. But let's face it, you guys, since the last playoff run in 2002, and then, of course, they had that great cover-behind victory over the Giants that year in the first round of the playoffs. And that was the last time they made it. And then Mariucci got fired the next year. It just seems like they've been going around in circles ever since. There'll be a year where they go 8-8 or 9-7. You think, okay, it's starting. They're starting to get back up. And then the next year, 7-9.
It's just a tease.
It's a tease, exactly. And, that's the thing. For you, let me ask you guys, where do you think, really, we saw the York, DeBartolo had to leave. His sister, Denise, took over, and then his, her husband, John York, took over control of the franchise. And Jed York, his son, is running it. And Mariucci got fired after that playoff run. He got fired. So where do you think? And Dave, since you're on the phone, you're kind of the voice of God here. Let's ask Dave first. Dave, for you, where do you think the 49ers started to? When did this whole downward spiral? When did it really hit you? When do you think it started?
I would say, oddly enough, when back in 2004, 2005, there's that period with Dennis Erickson, and it just, I think Terry Donahue, the ex-UCLA football coach, was the GM, and I think that was the Niners' worst. Every decision they made was bad. This was before they drafted Alex Smith, but it just seems from that period on, the Niners have just been at best at mediocrity, And I think we have a new head coach now, and I'm starting to sense that things are going to change, but it's just there's still too much of the mediocrity that we still have to get away from, especially up the Niners, their glory days of the 80s and 90s. You know.
Absolutely. But that's the other thing. I mean, these things do go in cycles, and I think we as Niner fans, we've been spoiled. We were spoiled for 20 years. I mean,
Sure.
we were the best team in football, or at least among the best team in football for 20 years. So I think for us, it's very hard to see our team struggling so much because we grew up. I mean, you know, Ben, you, me, and Dave grew up with with Joe Montana, Steve Young, Jerry Rice, you know, Ronnie Lott, all the great names. And, you know, Alex, you were on the tail end of that, of course. But, you know, we grew up with all these great names, and all of a sudden, it's like, who's the left tackle?
Well,
you know, who's the safety? You know, it's like you don't have the huge names anymore. I mean, it's just, the team's not as good.
Well, the thing is that the Niners had consistency throughout the entire run that they had Walsh. When Walsh came in, he had the same consistent plan. He was very tight in himself. He was the GM at the same time as being the coach. And then when Seifert came in, Seifert was literally Walsh's pick to take over.
Right.
He ran the same plan. And as soon as both Walsh had to retire and Seifert left, Mariucci did a good job, but after that, you know, things got a little shaky. They let too many people go when they fired Mariucci. You know, Garcia was gone, Owens was gone. They didn't have the big name guys, and the whole franchise just fell out of control. You know, they've had, I believe, 3 coaches, or 3 or 4 now. It's tough to keep track of them since Mariucci got fired.
Yeah.
And they've had just as many GMs, if not more. I can't even recall some of the GMs we've had in the time, and it's just the franchise itself. There's just been no stability.
Well, and before we get to what's going on in the field, let me ask Ben. I'll ask you this: do you think? Because it seems to me, and I think it seems to a lot of Niner fans probably, that the franchise in the front office, the Yorks, you know, all that's going on in the front office, they seem more focused on let's get the heck out of Candlestick Park than let's put a winner on the field. I mean, does it seem like that to you, or what do you think's going on there?
Well, you know, I can't speak for all the front office moves because honestly, I don't know, you know, how their budget is. I don't know a whole lot of details on that. You know, I think the thing is, like you said with Montana and Young, the Niners are used to having one of the best quarterbacks of all time at the helm, and they just don't have that anymore. And it's tough to get used to that and then try to change.
And you know, at the same time, you also have to look that if you can't put it on the organization focusing on Candlestick because they've had that opportunity. You know, the Niners were promised the 2002 Super Bowl if they had a new stadium built for them. So it hasn't been even during their glory run where, you know, that was starting to end towards the end of Young's career, but it hasn't been, you know, just because the Yorks are trying to get a stadium, they can't focus on the football itself. They've been trying to build a new stadium now for about 15 years.
Right.
It's just, since it hasn't gotten done, it's become more and more of an issue, and it's become more and more of an excuse, more so than anything.
Well, I mean, Dave, if I remember originally, Dave, didn't the initial ballpark plan to replace Candlestick, the voters approved it, what was it, 99?
I think it was 1997 when Willie Brown was still mayor, and
Right.
Eddie DeBartolo was the owner still of the 49ers.
Right.
It seems like the demise of the Niners, in a way, started when Eddie D left the Niners.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, once Eddie D left, I think really, I was saying earlier, the downward spiral really seemed to start because it seems like they can't find exactly where they want to do, or what they can't really find an identity as a franchise. I think they're struggling finding identity as a franchise. I mean, they were the 49ers, and now they're like, okay, who do we want to be? Do we want, like on the field, we'll get to what's going on in the field. We've seen the last few years with Singletary. Okay, we're going to be a running team. Frank Gore, give the ball to Gore, give the ball to Gore, give the ball to Gore. On 3rd and long, give the ball to Gore.
And it didn't work.
Yeah. And so that's who we're going to be. We're going to be a running team. And then let's bring back the West Coast offense, but you don't really have the personnel for that. So they're trying to bring back the passing game. It hasn't worked, so it goes back to give the ball to Frank.
Well, the question becomes, as a Niner fan, if you want let's just put his name out there because everybody's thinking about him. If you want Andrew Luck, you're looking at Andrew Luck in the draft.
Would we want him?
Well, are you willing?
I think we all do, Dave.
The question is, it's not a question of if you want Andrew Luck. Everybody wants Andrew Luck. I guarantee you the Colts right now are thinking about Andrew Luck just because they don't know what Peyton's going to be like.
Right.
the question isn't, do you want him? It's, are you willing, let's put it this way, if the Niners are willing to tank the season, you get Andrew Luck, are you willing as a fan to accept a tanking for a year so you can get rid of Smith, you can get Luck, and you can build your franchise around Luck as your starting quarterback for the next, however odd years, with Harbaugh, his coach from college, where he was so successful with as his coach here in the NFL? That's a question.
Let me add to this because I got a few minutes, guys. But, I wouldn't mind. I think the Niners, the thing is they're playing at probably the worst division in football, the NFC West. The Niners could go 7-9 and make the playoffs. So it's really going to be hard for them to tank the season.
Seahawks did.
But, to get Andrew Luck over Alex Smith for another year, unless Alex Smith becomes a Pro Bowler, I would be more in favor of that.
Well, and you brought, Alex, you and Dave brought up Alex Smith, and that's a good lead-in right there. Because we were talking about the number of coaches and the number of staff changes since DeBartolo left and York took over, and you just mentioned, look at the offensive coordinators. Since Alex Smith was drafted in 2005, including this season, there have been 7. Mike McCarthy, Norv Turner, Hostler, Martz, Jimmy Ray, Mike Johnson, and now Greg Roman. To an extent. I always, to an extent, like to defend Smith in the fact that, it's hard to develop as a quarterback when you don't, when you have so many offensive coordinator changes because the plan changes every year.
Well, you can say that, but at the same time, he's had success. He had success under Turner.
He did.
It's just, it has to be the scheme. If Norv Turner had been his coordinator for another year, he could have been a Pro Bowler. We wouldn't be talking about it. He'd be the set-in-stone quarterback. We maybe have some more success. Turner left to go take a head coaching job. Good for him. Smith had to adjust, and you just can't put an excuse down anymore. He's been a 7-year NFL quarterback, and he is still making the same mistakes he made his rookie year that we were saying they're experienced mistakes. He doesn't have the experience. He will in time. He's had plenty of experience now. He's started. He's come off the bench. He's been an injury replacement. He's been replaced by injury. He's had to recover. He has every experience that you can get as an NFL quarterback where you have to learn to bounce back. He hasn't. I think it's time.
Okay. I think most 49er fans would agree with you. Yeah, definitely. All right, well, let's go around the room with this one. We'll start with the voice of God. We'll start with Dave. Hey, Dave, let me ask you this. Can the Niners, do you think after all these years with the Yorks, can the Niners win with the Yorks in the front office? And if so, what needs to happen? It's a loaded question, isn't it?
As of this moment, I would agree with what Alex was saying earlier. As long as you still have Alex Smith as quarterback, it's not going to look good. It might take another 3-4 years. You're going to have to get a new quarterback. I think head coach-wise, I trust Harbaugh that he's going to bring in more positivity, and his coaching will be much better than even the last few coaches we've had with Nolan and Singletary. We have enough good running backs. I think our defense, led by Patrick Willis, is going to lead the way. Even though we do need we need better cornerback play after that, just breakdown against the Cowboys. But, I don't know. It just seems like they're going to be at a state of mediocrity until maybe there's a change in ownership.
Although the thing is, that's the thing. We all know anything can happen on the field. I know. To go to baseball for 1 second with the Giants, a lot of people thought, after the Bonds years and even at the end of the Bonds years where the team wasn't successful anymore, I know a lot of Giants fans, and it was in the press, is this team, because it's rely on veterans, do this, can the team win under, the current management? And they did. McGowan was gone, but it was basically the same management. They turned it around in 2009 and then won the series last year. So that's the thing. That's the fun thing about doing sports talk is we can make these, they'll never win under the Yorks, but anything can happen. But
hey guys, I got to split now. It's 3:00 here. Have a good show. You guys sound great, and I'll look forward to being there in the future.
Yeah, good talking to you, Dave. Talk to you soon, man. Thanks.
Dave.
Right.
Thanks for calling in.
No problem.
That was David Frias, our other sports junkie from San Francisco. And guys, okay, while we're still on the Niners, let me ask, Alex, let me throw this at you because I know you watched a lot of Stanford football and you saw Jim Harbaugh coaching. What do you think Harbaugh brings to the table for the 49ers that maybe wasn't there with Singletary and with Dennis Erickson and the guys with Singletary and before him?
Well, Harbaugh is a coach that will adapt to his players. He's not a coach that will make his players adapt to him. So far what we've seen in the 2 games that the Niners have played is that they've kind of hidden Alex Smith a little more than you'd expect. You're not going to hide your quarterback in a quarterback-driven league, but they haven't made Smith, go over the top that much. They've made some very opportunistic plays. They've let him think on his feet on some pass plays. They've let him make plays that he feels like, but they haven't been making him make plays, which is where Harbaugh has been really successful. Successful with Andrew Luck when he was at Stanford. They weren't a pass-oriented team. They were a run-heavy team. But when they did run pass plays, they were the pass plays that fit Luck, and they were the smart pass plays, and they ended up being successful. That's why he was so highly touted. And if he does that with Smith, it's a difference of, do you make Smith throw deep? Which, we've tried at times. It's worked every now and then. But down the long haul, Smith just doesn't have the arm to throw deep 80 times during a season. He can't do that. Or even, at least twice a game. He can maybe do it 2 or 3 times a game, but you can't be expecting him to do it at least once a drive.
Right.
Ben?
Yeah, well, I've always thought the offensive line was a big problem. He's a great scrambling quarterback, but in that same vein of thought, he's being asked to scramble all the time.
Yeah.
And
He's not Steve Young, let's face it.
And if you think about just the game against the Cowboys, there was a snap that went over his head where Smith actually was able to recover, pick it up, and make a play of it where he almost threw a touchdown pass to Gore, where had Gore caught it would have been a touchdown, but he got interfered with. So instead of it being a 10, 11-yard loss, it was a gain down up to the 1. But some people I was with at the game, my father specifically, said the reason why Smith was so good at that is because he's had 5 years to practice it.
And that's very true. That's true.
Right.
Smith, and that's the thing. Ben and Dave brought it up too. Ben, you made a great point to me earlier. You agree with Dave. It's the offensive line. It's been a huge problem. I think Alex is right in the sense that I think Smith has had enough chances. He's had enough chance to adjust, but at the same time, I talked about the coaching changes.
The Niners haven't made it easy for him.
Right,
No.
and he's never had an offensive line. He has never had a solid offensive line to work with.
Right.
Well, at the same time, they're developing a line now. They have some very solid linemen, Ayupati, Staley. They have some guys that are going to be cornerstones if you just give them time to develop. It's just these guys are better at run blocking, first off, both Staley and Ayupati, just because they're your 2 big guys. And Anthony Davis is also in that same range. He's a better run blocker. However, they can pass block. They are not offensive linemen that can pass block 40 times a game.
And one more thing on the Niners here, Ben. Do you think that with Singletary and the guys before him and Nolan, they were mostly defensive coaches, and we saw the defense got a lot better. The Niners have a pretty good defense. It's not like the best, but it's pretty good. They got
I put it in the top 10 right now.
Exactly, and they have Patrick Willis, who's a big playmaker. We lost to KO Spikes, but there's still.
So I think it was a big loss.
It was
because he gave that veteran leadership that Willis doesn't have yet.
Well,
Right,
I think Willis is, he's going to step into that role.
No, there's no doubt in my mind. Willis has developed himself into just a silent leader. You're not going to hear Patrick Willis talk about the game to the TV or to the cameras. Not like Spikes did. He's not coming out and he's saying anything. He leads in practice, in the locker room to the teammates, and on the field.
And that's just who he is. There was nothing wrong with the way Spikes did things, but Willis is a different type of personality. And
that's what I was going to ask. Harbaugh, we were talking about the new coaches being defense. I think Harbaugh, I see, is mainly known because of what he did at Stanford with Andrew Luck and those guys as an offensive coach.
And that's what they need.
And that's what exactly, and that's what the Niners seem to need.
Well, Harbaugh just knows how to play quarterback. He was
a quarterback.
And it comes from a family of quarterbacks.
Right. And he's from a family of quarterbacks. He's
coached,
actually. He coached at his father's university, where his father coached at Western Kentucky, for years as a volunteer while he was still a quarterback in the NFL. And he was, up until these first 2 weeks, he was the last quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts franchise before Peyton.
Yeah.
He knows how to play quarterback. He knows how to coach them. You just need to give him time. We could be sitting here week 15 or 16 of the season. The Niners could be 10-4, 10-5. And Alex Smith could be having a great season, even though he maybe doesn't do as much. He does the right things. That's the question, is that There's been some questionable calls. I just think that they need to fully grasp the system. You know, the lockout hurt them in that way, but it will give them a chance to develop more in games than you would have seen. And it'll hopefully, for the sake of our Niner fans, it'll turn out better than it has in the past.
Okay, we're about to wrap up. No, go ahead, Ben. Sorry.
I think you got to consider the keeping Harbaugh around as coach might be the most important signing that they can do.
And wrapping him up for 5 years, and if you can keep him for the 5 years you wrapped him up, you know, pay him the $25 million that they did. If he can make a difference, not just with Smith, but just with anybody on the team, and make them into maybe just a one-win better team, as we saw last year with this division at 7-9, getting the division for Seattle, that one win makes the difference last year between sitting on your butts in January and playing football.
Oh, yeah, because the Niners were in it until week 16. I mean, they were in it to the last game, right? I mean,
right.
They were basically
They finished 6-10. Had they won one more game, they have the division because they had the best overall record in division.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's weird how that works, though, with the best record in the divisions. I mean, you know, going on the other side of the bay, the Raiders, they swept the Western Division last year. They swept the NFC West, but they didn't get the Chiefs won the division.
And I think the Raiders, even after 2 games, kind of showed the difference that a good coach can make. And
well, and the Chiefs are showing it's a completely different season so far in the last 2 games too.
Well, you also have to understand that both the Chiefs' first game, the Chiefs looked terrible in Detroit. Detroit is a team that they're going to be a wreck because their defense is just so solid. They gave Stafford the chance to build up. They haven't tried to get rid of the offensive coordinator, which is what happened here with Smith. Again, to an extent, that is an issue, but Stafford was able to adjust to the league. He's been hurt. He's able to bounce back. He's got some solid guys around him that are consistently there, and that's why the Lions are going to be forced to be reckoned with. But both the Chiefs and the Raiders ran into the problem this year that is the Buffalo Bills, who are so undervalued this year. They have a shot to beat the Patriots this week, big time.
That's going to be
in Buffalo. In
Buffalo.
They shouldn't have given up Dante Whitner. We'll take him.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Real quick. Can the Niners win the NFC West? And what's your prediction for the West?
I think they absolutely can. I think the Seahawks are going to be hurt without having Hasselbeck this year, and bringing up Tavares Jackson is I think is not quite a suitable replacement. He's okay as a starting quarterback, but Hasselbeck was really good.
Well, yeah, I mean, Hasselbeck, that's a move I don't understand. I mean, Hasselbeck knew the offense. He knew the offense up there in Seattle, so it's a little weird. And he'd been to the playoffs with them. He'd led them to the playoffs.
But the issue was that Hasselbeck, if he wanted to stay in Seattle, he wanted long term.
Right.
And he wanted some decent amount of money, whereas Seattle wanted him, if anything, for a year.
Yeah.
So that was that issue.
And the Rams in the first game, Bradford got hurt, Jackson got hurt, and I think Amendola also got hurt. I know Jackson's should be close to being back, but that's going to obviously hurt the team. And then the Cardinals, I think, would probably be the next closest rival for the Niners. But they're hurting too.
I still cannot see a team in the NFC West getting 10 wins.
I feel the same way.
I think the division winner is
going to be ugly.
9-7. And if they perform well, whether I would take the Niners just simply because they've looked consistent in both games and they were competitive even against a very good Cowboys team. Now, granted, the Cowboys were missing a very crucial offensive weapon in Des Bryant, and they still were eating up the Niners secondary. They've still looked good defensively in the first half. They had some consistent offensive play up until late, and I just think that's got to be enough in a very weak division. Yeah,
and I think from my point, I think both of you make good points. I agree with Ben's point about the Cardinals because I mean we all know that the Cardinal problem. The big problem, at least that everyone knew about with the Cardinals, was the quarterback situation. And then they go out after the lockout ends. They go out, they get Kevin Kolb. And, obviously, and they still have Anquan Bolden. Larry Fitzgerald, Fitzgerald. We don't know how much of a difference Kolb will make yet because it's only been a couple of games. But still, that's an improvement over what they had last year.
Sure, but they lost one of their top-line cornerbacks.
Right.
And getting Kolb, so...
So I seriously, out of just looking at the new, the Cardinals did solve the quarterback problem. I think the Cardinals should. I think seriously, all 4 teams could be in it. I think this division is not going to be one team's going to run away with it. I think we all know that. No one's going to win 10 games. I think the Niners could win it. I don't even want to make a prediction at this point because it's too early. To me, it's too early. But I will say, I think every team is going to be in this race.
If you had to make a pick, have to. If
I have to make a pick.
Yeah, I'm saying you have to. Make a pick right now.
Make a pick right now? Okay.
You better say
I'll take
Niners.
The 49ers. I'm going to go with the Niners.
To me,
Call me a homer if you want to. I'm going with the Niners.
To me, it's between the Niners and the Cardinals, and
Yeah.
I think it's close. And, well, heck, I'll even make an argument for them. I think they got one of the best defenses in the league, and I think that's gonna put them over the top. All they need on offense really is a good quarterback. Their running back's good. Their receivers are good. Their tight end's good.
Anybody
That should be
get the
enough.
Niner defense on their fantasy team? I didn't. I'm just curious.
I've got all the individual players on
Oh,
my
do
team.
you? Okay.
Willis, Whitner, and Jason Smith.
Yeah, you're 2-0 so far in the league, so
I'm doing okay.
You're doing well.
Alex, if you had to take a team in the NFC West, your choice?
Now, come on, you made me
It
take one.
just has to be the Niners. They have too much talent in a weak division. They don't have talent to win a playoff game. You throw in a home factor, they have a chance. They don't have talent to win a playoff game on the road for sure. But in this weak division with 6 games, you could see them going 5-1 and taking the division.
Absolutely.
That'd be a lot of fun. I think it's
about time.
Yeah, I think at this point, Niner fans would take a trip to the playoffs any way we could get it. Honestly,
Right.
It's been almost 10 years.
I'll have no complaints about getting in. I hope that you go at least 8-8 and get in.
Yeah, like I said, we'll take it. Some people go, if we go 7-9, some people go, oh well, yeah, they don't deserve it. Yeah, but we'll take it. Okay, we're gonna wrap up the Niners segment, and we're the Sports Junkies. We'll be back.